Cordy, and yesterday I read a retraction from Jim Cookson about a statement that he made. I've since spoken to him again, and he's made some even more inflammatory comments about Marcus Rashford. And all I'd say to that is, Jim, what could be the problem with feeding almost starving kids? I don't see what your problem is, chap. Still, he's my favourite footballer other than Dennis Bergkamp, Teddy Sheringham, Darren Anderton, Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, Ray Parlour. Obviously. Something I can't tell you about, but something fairly exciting for me happened last night, and as a result I needed to get hold of a Vox AC30. So Gary, the guitarist in the 60s band that I used to play keyboard in, is an AC30 fan, and he's got a hand-wired thing from like the 90s, the Korg ones, and he's also got this thing which is pretty much 1970, 1971 Vox AC30 top boost, and it's from before they put reverb in them. Basically sounds a lot smoother to me than a more modern Vox does. I think probably that's partly to do with the silver bells and the way that they've aged over time. Is it degaussing is the name of the thing that happens to magnets? But anyway, I was really enjoying it, and I've been making some videos with it, and hopefully you'll see a little bit more of it soon and in some other places. Anyway, it got me on this kind of Vox vibe, and so I've put together a little Vox preset for the FM3. For the cleans, I'm using the Class A 30 watt TB top boost. I say cleans, they're pretty driven, and to get that kind of tone out of a AC30 with single coils, you'd have to be punishingly loud, as I've found out over the last few hours. And the cab that I'm using is the Factory 2 473 and 480. I'm using both of those. So one of those is the 4x12 Beetle with the 121, and the other one is the 4x12 Beetle with the 160. I don't know if those are Vox cabs, to be honest. I need to look that up and check that out, but try and find some more and see if there's anything even closer. And then for the lead tone, it's basically the same cabs and everything, but I've just switched over to the Carol Ann Tucana lead, which has got nothing to do with Vox, but I'm playing it through the same cabs that I've chosen there. The cabs and speakers can help to give it that kind of flavour anyway, I find. That's one of the kind of key things that can tie together a sound. So I guess it got me thinking of the kind of age-old debate. I say age-old, it's about, 20-year-old debate now. The debate, I guess, is, can modelers get close to a valve amp, or close enough, or where are we at with that? And it got me kind of thinking, like, I think one of the key things that is missing with a modeler, no matter how much you spend on a modeler, whether it's a Kemper or an FM3 or a Helix, whatever you end up buying, or an Iridium, as good as they sound, I think one of the key differences is sheer volume. So even on like 2 or 3, a Vox AC30 is insanely kind of loud for a room this size, and it's basically at gigging volume, particularly with today's kind of stages. I know the guitarist in band, Gary, used an AC30. For some places it's just too loud no matter where you set it, especially if you're playing humbuckers, and so he's moved down to an AC15, which is also loud. And I think that's the thing, when you go to turn up an FM3 or a Helix or whatever else you're using, if you were to put it at that kind of volume, I think people would generally just be telling you to turn down, and I don't know whether that's part of the equation. The other thing is, you've got a 2x12 cabinet or even a 1x12 guitar cabinet. They chuck out loads and loads and loads of low end comparative to whatever you're monitoring with. So like I'm monitoring with JBL LSR 305s, and those are two kind of 5-inch speakers, and obviously they kick out far less bass than something like this does, and that for me is a large part of where feel comes from. So I don't know if you've ever gigged with in-ears and modelers, you'll find that whatever the modeler is, so I've done this with a Kemper, I've done it with Helix, I've done it not with an FM3 because I've never gigged it because of the old C word, but the first thing that happens when the in-ears slip out slightly is you start to lose all of the low end, and for me that's where all the feel goes, and that's what leads me to conclude that most of the feel of a thing is about the bass, kind of that thump or whatever, and I think that's one of the key ingredients you get out of an actual amp. Go on then, sausage. This dog is called Elsa. She and Fenton had a son called Nemo. And that's just science, obviously. I think the point really is that they're doing completely different things. And so I was recording a demo with this yesterday evening, and it's really punishingly loud. And if you're trying to get a little bit of drive out of this with single coils, you're going to have to be pushing, you know, around kind of halfway up the volume knob, and then things are just brutally loud, to the point where my preamps and mics don't particularly like it. And that's just not a thing that you have to do with a modeler. I think recorded results are super close anyway with the FM3 or the Helix or whatever you're using. And so when it comes to making a choice about recording with an FM3 or a Helix or a real valve amp, most of the time I'll go for the modeler, just because I don't want to bring the house down around me with sheer volume, particularly if I'm trying to get drive out of an AC30 or a blues breaker or something. I know the guys at Line 6 have a room full of kind of valve amps and classic valve amps and all this stuff, and I don't think they're attempting to replace valve amps in any way, and I think that's worth bearing in mind. So when you're making a choice between, can I replace my valve amp with a modeler, I think it kind of depends what you're trying to do. If you're gigging with a thing, generally I would say the valve amp is going to win out, but in terms of reliability and in terms of getting into and out of a venue, a modeler is probably going to be more practical. And if you're going into in-ears anyway, or if you've got a sound man who's saying everything's too loud, then potentially the valve amp is sort of rendered a little bit pointless. And I guess another thing you could think about is pretty much all DAWs have nice reverb and have nice compressors and have nice delays. I guess I'd say probably most of us have our own kind of delay pedals and reverbs that we use, or in the modelers we use reverbs and delays. It would probably be more practical to use the delays that we've already got in our digital audio workstations. It would probably be cheaper than buying a Chase Bliss delay for 400 quid or whatever they are. But at the end of the day, we make choices based on other factors, and I think that's hopefully why valve amps are going to stick around for forever, hopefully. I think it's so cool that I can play like a 50-year-old amp like this, and a bit of history that is still working and has seen a lot of stuff. I think it's really cool. If you've not played valve amps before, I think it's worth checking them out. You know, they're not all expensive. The Marshall Origin series I really like. You can get second-hand Mezzas for not stupid money. You know, like my first Mezza Boogie amp was a Nomad 45. I've still got it downstairs. You don't have to pay crazy money for a good valve amp. And particularly Vox AC30s or Fender Twins, because of the size of them now, you can generally pick them up for fairly good money. But yeah, just some rambling about valve amps. What have we achieved? Nothing, but hopefully you enjoyed the playing at the start. You can get those presets if you use the Buy Me a Coffee link and write a message saying gimme. I'll send those over to you with all the other ones, but hopefully that was enjoyable, and yeah, more to come with this cool amp. And thank you, Gary, for the loan. Cheers.